Hi, my name is Liz and this is the Pink Lookbook, and today I'd like to take you to Paris to discuss the most recent haute couture shows. I don't know how you feel about them. I have to say I found a lot of the collections very boring because they were rather on the pret-à-porter side than haute couture. But there were a few shows that really stood out, and it is no surprise that Maison Schiaparelli under Daniel Roseberry is among them. And in this video I would like to discuss why I think this collection was so successful. Let's not forget, we are talking here about haute couture, which not only means expensive materials, traditional techniques and craftsmanship, but also this is the closest link between fashion and art. So very often we expect to see designs that are unusual. It's probably nothing that we are going to see on the street every day. And this is something where I think Daniel Roseberry is really good at. And also he manages to strike the right balance between the past and the heritage of the Maison Schiaparelli and the future. He takes the Schiaparelli codes without being too literal, he makes them very modern, and he also manages to add his personal touch. This collection was called Schiaparelien, and I did not really know what Roseberry meant with the term, but there's actually a reason for it. Elsa Schiaparelli was very much interested in astrology, but also in astronomy, because it kind of ran in her family. Her uncle Giovanni was the director of the Brera Observatory in Milan, and he actually discovered landscapes on Mars. And he also coined the term Martian. So Schiaparelien is a play on the word Martian, and Elsa Schiaparelli launched the famous Zodiac collection in 1938. You may have seen this beautiful cape with the sun rays and the god Apollon in the middle, and there's also a jacket, a blue jacket with heavy embroidery and zodiac signs, which was recently reissued by the Maison. Roseberry explained that with this collection he aimed at showing contradictions, and his main explanation was Earthbound and Heaven Sent. So we are talking here about human beings on Earth and space, extraterrestrial creatures, aliens. But he also wanted to show the contradictions between, for example, the past and the future. And he does this in a way that is not very obvious or literal. For example, he uses old techniques like lace and turns them into futuristic structures. Or he takes technology, which is now outdated, and uses these parts to create a futuristic dress. All of this is something that we are going to see. It looks very avant-garde, very modern, sometimes very shocking. And Roseberry does not forget about the codes of the Maison Schiaparelli, so we can find the padlock, the keyhole, the mouth, the eyes, but all of this is done quite subtly. At the same time, he also adds his personal touch, because this collection is very much inspired by his home state, Texas. So we see a lot of cowboy boots, belt buckles, the bandana, fringes, horse braids. And I think it's a very successful amalgamation. And what I like about Daniel Roseberry is that he is proof that you can have an international brand that is very successful, but at the same time it is very artistic as well. Now let's analyze the looks, and already the first one made it clear that we are at a runway show of Schiaparelli, because it was this black shiny vinyl dress with exaggerated shoulders, and this is very much Schiaparelli. At the same time, these exaggerated shoulders reminded me of horseback riding, the saddles for horseback riding, and this may be a reference to Texas. At the same time, when you looked closely in this very intricate collar or neckline, you could find the padlock, so a Schiaparelli code. And also the following two looks were along this structural approach, these exaggerated shapes. And especially look 3 is interesting because we have this beautiful velvet gown here with this very exaggerated neckline. So immediately when I looked at this ensemble, I was like, oh, this is very creepy, this is alien. And this is very much Schiaparelli, because we associate the term shocking with Schiaparelli. She was a designer who not only wanted to create beautiful garments, but also provocative outfits. She wanted to shock, she wanted to creep us out. And this is exactly what Daniel Roseberry tried in this collection as well. Look 4 was again a very sculptural look, and it was the first one where we clearly see this reference to Texas because of the belt buckles. And what I really liked is this Easter egg there, because when you zoom in on the belt buckles, you can see that they feature the eye, a Schiaparelli code, and also this heart shape. The next look was one that I saw all over social media. From the front, it actually looked quite elegant, quite normal for Schiaparelli, because it was this mesh corset top with an exoskeleton structure already in the front. You can see it with the corset. And then the model had this necklace with the padlock, but another necklace that looked like an alien necklace. And when she turned around, you could see the real exoskeleton in silver. She had these long things on her back, which were really, really creepy, and so many people had an opinion on that. And when we talk about outrage and discussions on Instagram, the following two looks were probably the ones that polarized most. The first one was quite simple. It was an off-white tank top with inside-out cargo pants, so quite simple for haute couture, but the model carried a life-size doll, which was really creepy. It was covered in microchips or something like this at first sight, and it could be a robot, it could be an alien, so this already polarized a lot. And then a similar interpretation was taken for the next dress, which was basically very futuristic, a short dress, and when you look closely, you see different hardware parts. So when I saw those two looks, I also have to admit I was a bit surprised. I did not really know what to think, and I was already too worried. Did he take it too far? But I wanted some answers, and I looked for interviews, and I found a video where Roseberry explained that all of these parts for the robot doll and also the robot dress were parts from the years before 2007. This was the time when the first smartphones came up, and he grew up in this time, and he took fans from computers, calculators, CDs, microchips, and turned them into the doll, into the dress. And I actually know what he was going for. As I explained in my video about Y2K trends, at the time it was all about the future, technology, and this is what he's referencing here, this move into the future, pre-smartphone, and then he upcycles all these materials. Online, a lot of people criticized it and said, how am I going to wash this garment? How am I going to sit down? But then I would like to say that we have to remind ourselves that this is an haute couture show, as I said before. This is the link between fashion and art, and not every garment is meant to be worn on a daily basis. Maybe some of these garments can be seen as artworks. This is a very philosophical question. I do see it on some singers, for example. Maybe this is something for Beyoncé's next tour, we never know. But this is also something that we have to bear in mind. And the online outrage didn't stop here. It moved over to the creature dress, and this was exactly what we got. It was this alien creature. It was a long gown with a balaclava mask, false resin eyelashes and hair, so it was really, really creepy. It looked like from another world, very much Schiaparelli. And yes, people criticized it, but I think this is more on the art spectrum of design, and it wanted to shock. But at the same time, we can also think you could remove the mask and just wear this gown with the keyhole, which is actually quite wearable and beautiful. And the next look with this asymmetrical jacket also shows that Roseberry not only works within this art spectrum, he knows that the collection needs to sell, and there also need to be some wearable pieces. This look is still rather hybrid because this asymmetrical jacket is very much avant-garde, and we have these structures on the sleeves. He also used this for two further looks, and there was a lot of discussion online. What is this? There were some sexual interpretations, which I'm going to spare you here. It is actually a reference to Texan horse braids, and it achieves this geometrical pattern on the garments. And as I said before, the following two looks were a bit more on the wearable and reduced side. I would like to point out one detail with this structural suit. There was measuring tape embroidery on it. And now we come to a very interesting part of the collection. It's this contrast between the past and the future, using old techniques or materials to create futuristic shapes. Roseberry worked with lace screens in front of basically the face of the models attached to the skirts. Screens were a theme this time at the haute couture shows because also Rahul Mishra in his superhero collection used those screens, but Roseberry does this a bit different. So we see these shapes, and at first we could say again it's like alien shapes, extraterrestrial, but then I reminded myself of this theme, Earthbound and Heaven Sent. So it could also be angel wings, it could be very angelic because of the lace, it's also innocence, and it also has something ethereal around it. So I think it was quite a good juxtaposition of the past and the future. And then again, we have this thing that Roseberry does really, really well, the incorporation of the Schiaparelli code. So if you zoom in on the pictures, you can actually find codes like the padlock or the keyhole, for example, in the lace. But when you at first look at the structures, you would not spot those codes. And I really like this because, as I said, Roseberry is successful because this new interpretation of the codes is not too literal. Elsa Schiaparelli was very famous for trompe-l'œil effects, which means to deceive our eyes. And already in her very first collection, she included trompe-l'œil elements like bows, for example. And Roseberry took this up in this collection with one dress. We have this cream dress, and then with silver sequins he created a trompe-l'œil effect of men's boxer shorts. I would like to point out look 17 because it's probably the most Roseberry, the most Texan look. We have these really big boots with the belt buckles. We also have the same buckles and leather on the skirt. And then there's this beautiful jacket that also has strong Texan elements in there, the long fringes. At the same time, it's beautifully embroidered with the Schiaparelli codes again. One of my most favorite looks is this structured dress. First of all, I think the color is very beautiful. I also like this exaggerated form. I like this avant-garde take on this dress. Also, what I really appreciated again is the subtle incorporation of the codes. We need to zoom in again on this upper part of the structure, then we can spot the padlock again. And also what I would like to point out here is the makeup. I think the makeup artists also deserve credit here because they successfully turned the models into these extraterrestrial creatures as well. And Daniel Roseberry used the structure in two more looks. The first one, in my opinion, is a hybrid of Schiaparellian elegance and Texas because we have this black gown with cream embroidery, the fringes, and also the bandana, where Roseberry said it is a reference to Texas. And then also the third interpretation again has this black gown as a base, and then we see the fringes. It's very elegant, but it's still a subtle nod to Texas. I cannot say too much about this next look. I think it's a beautiful dress, but I think probably in real life it was more interesting because the description said there are some references to Schiaparelli again, which I could not see in the videos or in the photos. And then also just briefly, this next look is a more obvious reference of Texas. We have this bandana theme in the jacket, which is taken more into the Schiaparelli universe. And this next dress is another more obvious interpretation of Schiaparelli's past designs. We have a skeleton dress here, and in 1938 Elsa Schiaparelli designed a skeleton dress together with artist Salvador Dali. So this is again Roseberry taking the past into the future. I like his interpretation because it's not too literal again. It has the exaggerated shoulders and it flows really nicely with the fringes. And you may think that the fringes are there simply for this movement and for the ease. But when we know about the topic of this collection, it is clear that this is also the Texan reference. And of course, Daniel Roseberry knows that he can not only be in this artistic sphere, he also needs to sell this collection. So naturally, towards the end of the collection, the designs become more reduced, more simple, I would say. But I would also like to point something out here. We now have this view, or our view is shaped by these extremes. We have seen the creatures, we were creeped out, we were shocked. And suddenly we see these designs, and compared to the previous ones, they look very simple. But when you imagine that you would wear this to a ball, for example, you would still stand out because they are very unusual and very avant-garde. This is what I like about Roseberry, and there's one dress which I would like to point out. It is a black dress which looks very simple. And when you look twice at the upper part, you can see this top part, it is described as a bra, actually is in a bow shape. And this is another hidden reference to the Schiaparelli codes. And this is why I like Roseberry so much, because sometimes you actually need to look twice to see the reference to Elsa Schiaparelli herself. Of course, there were also designs where I was not too convinced. For example, one look was too much on the pret-à-porter side. Also, this nude dress with the black parts covering the body was okay, and I was also not convinced of this black dress with the padlocks and then the hood. And now we have this last stunning look of the collection, this silver gown with this avant-garde shape again. When you zoom in, you see all the details, the craftsmanship. It's just beautiful. I would wear it. Maybe not with the shoes. This is a general thing that I noticed. I didn't really like those cowboy boot references styled with those beautiful gowns, but this is a personal styling opinion. In general, I really like the show for this reason, that Daniel Roseberry is proof that you can have a global brand that still has a strong artistic side to it. And now I'd like to hear from you. What did you think about this collection? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What were the elements that you appreciated? What are the things that you could live without? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Also head over to thepinklookbook.com for more fashion related articles, and don't forget to check out my fashion label Pelagona. If you like this video, I also think you would enjoy watching my video about the Yves Saint Laurent pret-à-porter shows. Thank you very much for watching this video, and see you soon.